Hi everyone. Like I said, actually a lot of my funds have already been stolen by Steve and Yari, but I'll try and fill a few of the gaps in. Excuse the first few slides, these are our sort of standard ones when we're doing a presentation. I guess as you're mainly Bristol people, you probably know about us anyway. Our head office in the UK is in Bristol, so hello, there we go, that's just me. As has just been said, we've been going for about 30 years. We're a Dutch bank, based in the UK base is in Bristol. That's what we're all about, and largely it's impact. And I think Yari's mentioned impact a few times, so it's all about positive impact when we're lending to organisations and entities. Again, a little bit more about our ethics and how we operate, so very much about sustainability and transparency. Look, lots of boring figures, but basically it means we've got loads of money to lend to the right projects, and it's trying to find those projects. Hopefully you guys won't go through them all, but we're very liquid. A lot of banks would kill to be in those sort of position at the moment. So this is why we're interested in this sector, and it's all about impact. And the thing we really like is, if it's a community organisation, it's the people actually getting together and delivering something for the people themselves. So big tick in our box of one of our core ethos. I'll give you a couple of examples, and Steve's already kind of done High Bickerton to death. So I was involved in this. I came in, wasn't 15 years ago, it was about 8 or 9 years ago, not long after I first started working with Triodos. Large project down in Devon. And at the time, I think Devon County Council were very forward thinking, and basically I had a farm, and the tenant had died or moved on, and it wasn't really viable as a farm, and they went to the community and said, look guys, we know there's a problem with housing, what can you do about it? And as Steve's already alluded to, there was various plans put forward, declined, etc., etc. Finally it was approved, and we got involved, and we lent money to develop housing, commercial units for rent, a network heating system, and there's also a community building on the site. This has all now been built out. The housing, there were various types. There were open market houses, there were shared equity houses, and there were long-term rental houses. The open market house side of things, I think, was probably the most interesting bit, because what it did is, once the whole project had been built out and that those houses sold, that is the mechanism that the council, Devon County Council, actually got paid for the land. So it's almost like a deferred purchase scheme. So that was really forward thinking at the time, and trust was mentioned earlier. And I think that really is an example of trust, that the council trusted the community to deliver what was a multi-million-pound project, and they would get paid right at the back end. And what that did was it meant that we could lend as a bank, because there wasn't an upfront purchase of the land. It's another local one that we've been involved in, and this is converting office building into residential use. This is something that we've completed on very recently, and I think you've probably seen on the news, television, there was a couple of articles about the work that was started there. So the difference here, there's two different types of organisation going on. You've got the community land trust model, and then you've got a co-housing project. And they're the two kinds of projects that we're involved in, and they're both delivering housing, affordable housing for people, but in a different way. Now, I think there's been various sort of figures and ratios and things discussed, and ways that banks look at things, and yes, it really is important. And I think Yari went into the kind of things that as a bank we look for in a project, but exactly the same as resonance. We're looking at who it is, what it is, and the affordability and the security, because at the end of the day we lend depositors money on to people like you. So we need to be relatively sure that we're going to get it back. So to get round that, what we look at is the affordability side of things and the security side of things, i.e. what something's worth. Security is an interesting one with affordable housing, because if you have a project and you get a valuer to go out and value it as affordable housing, 9 times out of 10, the value that comes back is very, very small, because you've got that tie in there. But one of the mechanisms that we used on High Bickington is that there was an arrangement as part of the planning that if everything went horribly, horribly wrong, Triodos as a bank could turn around and say, okay, High Bickington Community Land Trust, you've gone under for some reason. We then have to offer that site to another community land trust, a housing association, or back to the local authority. Now, after a period of time, if none of those want to take that land on and the buildings and run it, the bank could, and I do emphasise the word could because I can't see we would do given who we are, sell those properties on the open market. And what that did was it allowed us to actually get a valuation on an open market basis, which was 4 or 5 times higher than the affordable housing value. So it just meant it fitted more comfortably with the parameters that the bank could lend on. And that's something that's been replicated in a lot of community land trust models. It's almost a standard now, but it makes it fall largely within banks' lending parameters, not always. The other side of things that have been mentioned is affordability. And again, that's something that we've looked at several times and caused issues on quite a few of the projects that we were looking at. And again, because it's an affordable rental model and it's pegged at 80% of the average open market rent, if you're looking at what that rent is compared to the loan payments, quite often there's a mismatch, certainly in the early years. And a few of the projects that we looked at didn't work on that basis. So what we did is we came up with a mechanism that hopefully will try and even that out and make it more acceptable. So what we do now is we look at the loan and we split it into 2 chunks. There's one chunk that repays on 25 years, the capital and interest loan, as Steve mentioned. The other chunk, and quite often it's the larger chunk, we put on a 10-year interest-only fixed interest. So it takes out some of that worry, I think somebody else mentioned, the speakers mentioned, about interest rates rising. So you know for 10 years that's fixed. At the end of the 10 years, we then look at remortgaging that over another 25 years. So actually, that's where you're getting to Steve's magical 35-year figure. But what it does is the overall repayment works compared to the rental income that's coming in. So that's what we've been trying to do. We've got 2 or 3 projects that we've actually paid out on using that model, and at the moment it seems to be working. I think there's a question about people building single houses and that kind of thing. What I should have said to start off with, at the moment we don't do residential mortgages, so that's not something that we could help with at the moment. And I do say at the moment because things are changing. But what we are interested in is the development side of things, so we'll lend to build these bigger projects and then try and de-risk them as much as possible. So that could be from shared equity sales or open market sales. The shared equity side of things, if you guys are putting a project together, if you talk to the likes of Ecology, which have been mentioned before, and Nationwide, quite often what you can do is get a site-wide arrangement so that if people meet certain criteria, there's a pre-agreed mortgage available. So from my perspective, when I'm looking at a project, I'm going to lend however many hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds it might be to actually build everything. But if I know there's a takeout mechanism already in place for a chunk of it, that's a big tick. So then I can look at the next part of it. So it just de-risks things. There was, I think Yari said I'd go into all the details about percentages and bits and pieces. Terribly boring, but yes. The basics of it are twofold when you're looking at the development side of things. One is the land value. I think I've touched on how we look at that. And the other is the build costs, because during the development phase, what we look at is a combination of the land value of the planning consent and a percentage of the build costs. And typically that tends to be 70% of the land value, 70% of the build costs. And we will lend in stages as the project develops. That staged lending is valued, and typically that's a valuation by a quantity surveyor, or it could be a monitoring surveyor, and they will go down and say that amount of work has been done, it's got a value of X, so we can lend a percentage of that. Self-build and self-finish element is another interesting thing that we are very interested in lending into. And traditionally banks have always had an issue around putting a value on that. And what I've been doing is having conversations with a couple of QSs who will actually go to a premises that's being worked on and say, right, that work's being done. If a contractor was doing it, it would have this value. Now, providing it's been done to a good standard, from my perspective, it doesn't matter who's done it, whether it's you or a contractor, it still has the same value. So that's how we're looking at these self-build, self-finish projects. There is a proviso with that around self-build and self-finish is control and timescales. And that's key. So you need to have some sort of project manager in place to oversee that work, to make sure it's being done and it's kept up to speed, because you can't have something that's going to slow down the overall project just because it's, I don't know, 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, chucking it down in rain and freezing cold, and actually you fancy a duvet day, it's not getting the work done. There needs to be that control that keeps people working together, and actually peer pressure usually works. You know, people go around and kicking out of bed and say, oh, come on, get on with it, because you're holding everything up. But it's just something else to sort of consider. I think that's probably it. That's just me. You have all the contact details. Very keen to look at projects. I think Yari was saying, or Steve was saying, a lot of the community land trust projects so far have tended to be in rural areas. That's flipping over now. There's a lot of interest in urban projects. The issue with the urban projects is they tend to be larger. So I've gone from looking at, I did a small project down in Cornwall, St Goran, which was £200,000 or £300,000 to supply 7 affordable housing projects. Now looking at projects in South London, for instance, and you're looking at multi-million-pound projects. So I think what that's demonstrating is there is more confidence in communities actually delivering these projects because they're seeing them actually on the ground. So local authorities, other lenders are actually seeing projects being delivered, and it gives confidence all round.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
That's all right.